Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just
It's time
chill.
to bring you yet
Life
another
Well
amazing
Lived
episode.
by Omobola
And now,
Stephen. Live
welcome
life.
your host.
Live fully.
Now, the mission and the focus of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen is for us to share disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations on topics or subjects that are transformative and that is going to pivot the positive changes that you and I need. Now, we emphasize the importance of we intentionally embracing personal development and self-improvement along the course of our lives. Because when we do so, we find ourselves along the way. And it's such a joy and a sense of fulfillment when we truly find ourselves and also realizing there's a lot that life has in store for us. And also so many innate potentials and that lies within us waiting to be maximized. Now, all of this cannot really happen when we don't focus on personally developing ourselves, improving ourselves. I think that is very important for us. Now, this is the mission and the focus of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen podcast. My name is Omobola Stephen. I'm the host of the podcast, Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, where we offer disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations that is going to move you from where you are to where you need to be. Thank you, Francie Jain, for joining me on the show. Francie is the founder of Terawatt, a forward-thinking B2B marketplace. Good to have you and looking forward to a great time.
Thank you for having me, lady. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you once again and looking forward to a worthwhile conversation, focusing on your area of expertise, especially as you are a forward-thinking B2B marketplace, and also focus your expertise on the area of coaching and how it can better the organization when they begin to offer the right coaching systems to the organizations. I think it's going to transform the leadership of the organization indeed. So what do you think coaching can save organization millions of dollars?
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that, and not well known, is that there's a relationship between offering employees professional development and greater retained earnings and lower employee turnover at organizations. And so it used to be that employers thought, well, I will never pay for someone else to learn more at my organization because that will just make the person more valuable and then they'll leave. And it's actually the opposite. Especially Gen Z, actually, as a generation, expects professional development at their employer. And on top of that, there's a ton of research showing that the more that employers develop their employees, the lower the attrition of employees, the more that people stay. And it's really interesting because you would think that it might not be the case, that maybe people be willing to leave, but it turns out that when there's a lot of support for growing a person's brain and experience and all that stuff, money becomes less important to the employee. So it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Because if you think about the opposite, if you're ever working for a very toxic environment and someone offers you $1 more per hour, let's say, you would take it because you're like, well, I'm just so miserable here. I'll do anything, like that's fine. I'll take it, another $1. It's not that much more money, but at least I get to make a little bit more and I don't have to deal with these people. But if you are at a place where you're really happy and fulfilled and you're making a big impact and you're able to grow so much professionally that you just wouldn't be able to replicate it anywhere else, you just wouldn't leave. And I think what all that means to me is I think it just implies that organizations could save so much money if they just got a little bit more creative about how they engage their employees and a little bit less hierarchical and rigid. And I think the more that employers are able to do that, the better their retention. I mean, even when we were a little bit chatting earlier, we talked about, there's a discussion I had about the lowest paid employees and that being the highest turnover rate at a lot of organizations. And I think one of the great ways to retain those people is really to ask them what would be valuable or meaningful to them, and get their feedback, because likely the worries and concerns and issues of those entry-level people are going to be really different from a lot of the leaders of the organization, because they just have different, life problems. And so it's really hard to imagine being in someone else's shoes. So you don't have to, just ask them and start to co-create inexpensive solutions that can take advantage of technology or other ways just to make someone else's life better. And then that creates a much nicer dynamic between employer and employee.
Now, really, this situation or scenario, does it apply to all organizations? Now, I like to use customer service relations as the case study right here. Now, you talk about the importance of incorporating coaching into a business organization. It helps a lot. Now, we've had experiences or situations where leadership of organization do not then fit to invest a lot in customer service because they have found that these customer service executives do not stay too long in the organization. Some of them, after 3 months, a year, 6 months, they leave. And another set of people come in. So how do you begin to tackle this kind of situation? Now, I'm just using customer service department.
That's a good example. Yeah, it's a good example. I mean, that's a great one, a very high turnover, right? So I think really the first thing is, a lot of times when people are in business, they say, well, this turnover rate is just the average for the industry. It's the cost of doing business. Okay, none of that has to be true, right? You could be the leader. You could be the place that has the really low employee turnover. You have incredible customer service people. They're experts. You're promoting them, or you're paying them more, right, every year, because you're training them and making them better. Your customers are happy because they're adding more value than the typical customer service person does. I think for employers, the way to do that, to just lower the attrition, is just to expect more and offer more to these employees and not see them as widgets. I think that's a real problem in business, is this sense of oh, don't worry, we'll just hire another one. But really, you just been doing that forever then, you know what I mean? There's no end. And so the real point is developing these individual people and helping them grow and become better. And maybe they leave, maybe they don't, but you're making your organization so much better, and you're making your customers happy. There's a research from the NIH showing that burnout in nurses is 100% connected to all these different hospital metrics. So when nurse burnout is high, it also means that patient experience is low. Or when nurse burnout is high, the culture of safety is lower. And so it's the same thing, right? If you're frontline customer service, telemarketing people, let's say, are unhappy with their job and they're only there a short amount of time, they're going to have bad reactions with people on the phone. And by the way, I'm often that person. And it's really annoying, right? But when once in a while, you'll talk to somebody who's really knowledgeable. And maybe they don't give you the answer you want, but they're knowledgeable, they're kind, they take their time explaining what's going on. And then I leave and I'm not mad at the brand anymore, right? They're listen, Francie, we're not able to do that because of X, Y, and Z, but I hear you. And I mentioned your concerns to my manager, and, maybe you would be okay with a 10% coupon for blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? That response is lovely. And that will calm down any kind of angry caller. And I think you want to have that dynamic on every call, where someone who might be ready for a fight or, mad or whatever the thing is, starts to see the perspective of the organization and explain it in a non-confrontational way, rather than callers hanging up on the telemarketers or the people, And there's so many. I just feel and who doesn't want to be part of an organization where everything's better? Everything's better for the employee. It's better for the customer. It's just better for everyone. I think it's I think the big mind shift. And so you were talking about that before, what's the mind shift? And I think it is humans are not widgets. And by the way, humans are trainable. So instead of saying, oh, we'll just hire that person over there who's probably, like, grass is greener, right? Like, oh, this new hire is really going to be the solution to our problems. The solution to the problems is developing the people and, like, loving the ones you have, like growing the people you already have and making them your ideal employee, not trying to find your ideal employee and hire them and then not be involved. It's really like the training and the growing of the people you have.
All right. So now, what do you think is the true cost of employee turnover? Because at the end of the day, what's the feels if an organization loses an employee? Is this something that can be avoided or a risk that is worth taking?
Yeah. No, I mean, well, it depends on what they're doing in terms of turnover and retention and an open position. So the way to think about it is, if you have turnover, there are direct costs and then there are indirect costs. And every organization looks at it differently. But there's one case study that's really incredible that I love to spend time thinking about. And it just showed that when a healthcare system was able to reduce the turnover of their nurses, they saved millions and millions of dollars every year. And the reason is because nurses are not like any old employee. If you're the shortage of nurses, that impacts the safety at the hospital. So they're spending on traveling nurses or overtime or other ways to, like, fill the bodies, right? The need of people to actually, like, practically, like, support the patients. And so that payment of these short-term solutions is very, very, very expensive. So the more that you can retain the nurses, the more that you save. And so, like, the direct costs are things like recruiting cost or onboarding cost or time to fill the position or these traveling nurses, these temporary costs. But then you also have indirect costs, which are things like I talked about earlier, like, patient experience, because a lot of these metrics that hospitals follow are used to evaluate the hospital. And so there's a cost to having a poor, patient experience. So there's a cost to having, a high error rate. And those have to be evaluated. I mean, everyone's going to think about that differently, about what that actually costs them. But, there's a cost, and it's probably quantifiable in some way. And so to really be true to, and like thoughtful about your business, you really want to think about what are the costs of my current turnover rate, because until you really know that, you don't know how much money you could save. And you're right, you're just assuming that's just the cost of doing business. But the mind shift that we talked about, and instead of thinking about people as widgets and this replacement, this easy to replace philosophy, it's more like, think not like children, but same idea. Like, it's someone you want to grow, right? Your goal is to, like, help them be the best they can be. And someone may want to do it, they may not want to do it. So that's not your responsibility as the employer, but as the employer to really give them the opportunities to grow and do as much as they can, and then let the chips fall where they may a little bit, And I think that's sometimes can be hard for employers too, because they're thinking, well, I can't promote everyone. And of course you can't, but there are probably lots of people who will say, I've never had this experience. I never knew this was possible. Or, wow, I really love learning about this. I want to do more. And, everyone's going to be different about how they react to that kind of support. But that's what makes it interesting, and then you have different people, and some of those people might end up being like someone who stayed with the company for 30 years because it was just is exactly what they're looking for, right? Someone to really invest in them, and for them, then the money became secondary.
Right. I think at the end of the day, we all have to do our best and live the right. So let's talk on the challenges of employee retention.
Oh, okay. So, well, the one thing is that I do think that there's an often gap between what employees expect and what they think the leadership knows, and the same thing on the other side with the employers and what they expect and what the employees know that they know. And so I do think there's often an information gap. And so I think that surveying and trying to get people's opinions on things is really, really helpful in terms of bridging that gap. So, the first thing in terms of like how to improve retention is really just to understand what your organization's turnover is. And is that above, below, the same as the average in your industry? And so just to kind of have a benchmark just to know is valuable. Because if you are above the average, that is a, huge, blinking red light. That means that there is something going on at your organization that's way worse than there's some system or there's some environment culture that's way worse than just the average company. And vice versa. If you're below average, that means you're really doing something, and maybe you want to look into like what that is, and could you do more to actually even lower further the turnover? Because I think what happens is when you get to really low turnover, let's say 4%, 5%, your recruitment is just someone calling their friend, right? You have one spot open, someone calls a friend, they go, oh my God, my awesome office where I love to go, you've heard me talk about it, 100 times, do you want to work here? Like, that's a different conversation than putting your post on 1,000 hiring websites to try to find people because you've got such a bad reputation in the market. And so it's that kind of stuff that starts to change. And then the other thing that's interesting is when employees are engaged, they're interested in efficiency, they're interested in making things better, in, processes and things that engagement changes the culture of any organization. And that's kind of what starts to happen with these organizations. And that's why low turnover organizations end up being award-winning organizations, because people are really interested in making them better. They're not kind of like just doing the bare minimum.
Thank you, Francie. I'd like us to talk on the future of work. Now, on point is, what would you say to a situation where employees, they decide they want to learn on the job in order to garner more experience than going out there to hand more professional certifications, degree certifications, and bringing that to the organization? Which one do you think will suffice or improve the efficiency of the employee in the workplace? Having to decide, I want to expand my knowledge by learning on the job. I think because at the end of the day, I'm bringing back the knowledge right into the job rather than, spending a lot to garner outside experience. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, so there was a statistic I was just reading about that, I forget the number, but it's something like the average student debt among Gen Z, which is the entry level right now, is like $30,000 or $40,000, and it's been going up, so year over year. And so as a result, Gen Z is less interested in going to higher education institutions to learn, and they're more interested in having their employer provide on-the-job education, or maybe even like employer-sponsored degrees. And there's that's a really common thing. I know, at least in my history, that people could get MBAs through their employer, and there would be this relationship where you would go to night school, let's say like a part-time MBA, and it would be paid by your employer. And then the agreement was you would stay for another 5 years or something. You would agree to stay for another 5 years. And if you were to leave, then you would owe them the tuition. And I don't see why you can't do that with like different levels of nursing or other, or education, right? That could be done in-house. And I think now that especially we know that student debt is such a big concern, maybe this is something that organizations will be willing to look at to see what the return on investment could be. What does that do for their retention when they start paying for people's education? And I would suspect that it's one of these really high return on investment issues. But what's funny though is like knowing everything I know, it's not just that they get the degree and then everything goes back to normal, but you have to also then be coming up with other ways to develop them. And that could be like soft skills or public speaking or other things. And And in the end, like, we all can get better at the stuff we're doing. And so there's always an opportunity to learn. And so it doesn't have to be the like degree type thing. It could be soft skills. But like I said, I just think that all that kind of stuff, the more that an organization is interested in like helping these individual people grow, the stronger the culture will be, and the lower the turnover.
Absolutely. So how do you think coaching helps in employee retention?
I think it just really helps because it's creating a relationship between the employer and the employee that's separate a little bit from money, and it's a little bit more emotional. Um, and it's funny, like there's just a ton of research about this, that it's connected, employee develop. Oh, here's some great research. There's this research piece by McKinsey, which is like a big consulting firm, and they I forget the number, but it's like the largest corporations in the world, and they looked at the best, the highest, I guess, most profitable corporations in the world, and what were they doing? And the two things the most successful corporations did was they both developed individuals, but then also managed for metrics, meaning people were held accountable for like numbers and like follow through, but they also were being developed at the same time. And that combination of organization did so much better than the other three groups, which were either just no development, no metrics. Obviously, that's not doing very well. But a lot of organizations do metrics only, but they don't develop their employees, and they didn't do as well as the people and the metrics. And then only developing people but not holding people accountable to metrics didn't do very well either. And so I think the take for me always is, if you can come up with systems to hold people accountable but also help them develop, then it's going to yield so many benefits to the organization.
All right. So how can we offer high potential learning to help?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, obviously one way I think, my business is like a marketplace for executive coaching. And I think that's a great way to do it, because we can, help the employees choose what they want. But really, I think there's so many different ways to do it. It doesn't have to be my organization. It could be like a coaching organization, which they'll sometimes offer. Different organizations will offer subscriptions, or it could be, learning through asynchronous learning, where it's a little bit like taped stuff that you're learning, and maybe you're just discussing with colleagues. But I think the key is letting the employee choose, in my opinion, is probably one of the strongest things you can really do. Whatever you choose, however you choose to do it, that's what starts the ball rolling in terms of really helping employees.
Francie, do you have any exciting news? Perhaps a project you think is going to add value to the audience? Come on, you can share them if you have any.
Wow, let's see. I mean, we are always working with different organizations. I think the big thing we're going to start doing is just reaching out to actually employers with really high turnover, who are having trouble, and just really trying to see what we can do for them, because my belief is it doesn't have to be this way, and I think that we can educate employers who haven't seen this research, and then help them have better organizations. But nothing very exciting happening right now. But you can always check out our website, and we are adding coaches all the time, and we list all of our coaches, which is really fun. So you can kind of look at the kind of different people we have. And one of the things that's cool about our website is that we don't care about education or certifications for coaches. We care about talent. And I like that a lot, because there could be a situation where someone's highly educated, but they're just not really a great coach. And there could be somebody who's not super educated, but they're incredibly talented. And my point is, I don't really care how you got here, but if you are really talented and you really help people and you care to help people and you take all the wisdom that you have to like make someone's life better, like I want to know you and I want you to be on our platform. And that to me is awesome. And it's fun because initially we did do a little bit of like education, but I've come across so many really, really talented coaches who didn't go to college. But also we still have PhD type people too. We have all kinds, and all the coaches really want is like to be in a community with people who are like cool and interesting and impactful and like who have good hearts. And that's kind of that's what all of our coaches are like.
All right, good to know. Can you share your website, your social media handles? Come on, we
Yeah.
can learn about that and also what you've been up to lately.
Okay, yeah. So Terawatt.co, C-O, no M. That's the website. And we have a get in touch page if you want to set up a call or an email. And the social media I'm mostly active on is LinkedIn. And Terawatt has a page, and I post a lot on there. I post a lot of podcasts on there, and articles and things that are going on. But those are definitely my people, all this LinkedIn stuff.
All right, good to know. We'll be in touch. Thank you once again, Francie Jain. You are the founder of Terawatt, a forward-thinking B2B marketplace. Now, we really had an incredible time. You sharing your expertise, your thoughts, a professional experience on this topic, especially on coaching, and also how we can get it right with employee turnover and also retention. Such an in-depth discussion we had. I know there's a lot to talk about, and in the nearest future, we will be looking forward to having you feature on the podcast once again, so you can share your thoughts and also inspire the audience with your expertise. Thank you once again, Francie. It was a great time. We wish you best of luck in all of the projects you embark upon now and also in the nearest future.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was great to be here.
Absolutely. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, come on, you can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms you bump into online. And I guarantee you, you're going to have a super transformative experience as you listen to professionals just like Francie Jain, who've been there and done that, all about personally developing ourselves and also improving on ourselves. And now with disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations that is going to pivot the positive changes you have been looking forward to experiencing in your life and also in your career. I wish you best of luck always. I talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you, lady. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.